Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a reclusive mountain photographer inherits his grandfather's remote cabin, peace seems guaranteed until a power-hungry HOA president declares war. Trespass, surveillance, lies, and a full-blown showdown follow. This isn't just a land dispute, it's a battle for legacy, freedom, and sanity. They say home is where the heart is. For me, it's where the silence sings louder than city horns, where the pine trees sway like old friends, and where the only intrusion I ever tolerated was the occasional curious deer poking its nose against the window. My mountain cabin in the Blue Ridge Range wasn't just a place I inherited. It was a sanctuary passed down from my grandfather, Henry Hale, a man who believed that peace wasn't something you found. It was something you built and fiercely protected. I'm a photographer, landscape mostly. I shoot for National Geographic, aerial catalogs, and the rare environmental NGO with a budget big enough to pay in something other than goodwill and gratitude. I travel constantly, chasing light and seasons, but every few months I retreat to the cabin. No cell towers, no neighbors blasting leaf blowers at dawn, just me, my camera, and a couple of good flannel shirts. The land's been in my family since the 70s. Long before anyone thought about putting up cookie-cutter houses and calling it Silver Pines. The house itself is modest, timber frame, slate roof, solar-powered, built to last, and built with love. There's a handwritten blueprint in my grandfather's old file cabinet titled My Peaceful Retirement. He never made it to retirement, but I like to think he's enjoying it vicariously through me. Now here's the rub. The only road that leads to the cabin cuts through the Silver Pines HOA community. Back in the 90s, when that neighborhood was still just a patch of blueprints and bulldozers, my grandfather secured a formal easement, legal, notarized, recorded at the county clerk's office, guaranteeing our family access through what would eventually become their main road. No one complained for decades. In fact, half the folks who lived there thought the trail was part of a national park. Then came Karen Wells. Karen took over as HOA president 3 months ago. Former real estate agent, aged 55, going on 110 in attitude. She looked like someone who ironed her yoga pants and talked about curated suburban energy with a straight face. The first time I met her, I was passing through the gate in my dusty Jeep Cherokee, and she flagged me down like I was smuggling Georgies. "Excuse me," she said, arms folded so tight they looked like they'd snap off. "Are you a resident here?" "No, ma'am," I answered politely. "Just passing through to my property. I've got an easement. Have a good one." She stepped in front of my car. "We don't allow outside traffic. This is a private community." "I'm aware. That's why I have written access," I said, holding up the laminated copy I always kept in my glove box. "And been using this road since before this place had a name." She squinted at the paper like it was written in Klingon, muttered something about reevaluating community boundaries, and stomped off. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she was just posturing, newly elected, and looking to flex. That was naive. 2 weeks later, I returned to the cabin for a bird migration shoot, mid-spring, peak season for warblers, and found the entrance blocked by a thick, rusted chain looped around a pair of metal posts. Attached to it was a sign straight out of a dystopian movie: private HOA property, no access, violators prosecuted. Someone had even zip-tied fake security cameras to a nearby tree. I parked the Jeep, slung my camera bag over my shoulder, and hiked the rest of the way up to the cabin. The air was clean, but I wasn't. I was fuming. I wasn't about to play games with some amateur tyrant in Lululemon. The next morning, I filed a report with the local sheriff's office and requested a patrol unit accompany me to document the obstruction. They sent Lieutenant Morales, early 40s, calm demeanor, the kind of guy who's seen enough nonsense to develop an allergy to it. He and I drove up together. When we arrived, the chain was still in place. Morales took photos, logged GPS coordinates, and called Karen's number from the HOA sign. She didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, we heard the growl of oversized tires, and her white Jeep Grand Cherokee came rolling up the hill like she was about to evict squatters from a treehouse. She brought backup this time, a guy in a black tactical vest with the words private security on it, looking like he got kicked out of mall cop school for being too aggressive. Karen hopped out holding a red folder stuffed with papers. "I have here," she declared, "new internal policy updates that restrict all non-resident vehicular access. This road is under HOA jurisdiction. Morales raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, that doesn't override a recorded easement. The county records show Mr. Hale's access predates the formation of your HOA. Karen's face twitched. That agreement is outdated. It's subject to review. Morales shook his head. Not how it works. The chain needs to come down. Today. She didn't argue, but her smile said everything. This wasn't over. She left with her goon, the chain still dangling, but no longer locked. Morales looked at me as we watched her drive off. You've got a target on your back now, he said quietly. Document everything. I nodded, more tired than angry. I hadn't come here looking for a fight. But if Karen Wells wanted a battle over my grandfather's land, she was about to find out this wasn't just some vacation spot. It was legacy, and I don't lose ground lightly. I thought the chain ordeal would be the crescendo of HOA insanity for the season. I was wrong, so very wrong. The morning after Lieutenant Morales told Karen to remove the chain, I gave it a day before heading back up the trail with my Jeep. I was optimistic. Stupidly so. The chain was gone. At least that much had stuck, but the air was heavy, like the mountains themselves were holding their breath. I should have known better than to expect quiet from someone like Karen Wells. Control freaks don't retreat, they recalibrate. I spent the evening settling into the cabin, wiping down dusty shelves, running a systems check on the solar inverter, and prepping my gear for the coming week. Migration season waits for no one, especially not photographers battling power-hungry suburbanites. I plan to hike the ridge at dawn. There's a rock outcrop about 3 miles east that gives a perfect line of sight for catching golden-winged warblers during early flight. That night, I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, letting the sounds of the forest lull me into a false sense of peace. The owl calls, the rustling pines, the occasional creak of the deck beneath my feet. I even let myself laugh, thinking maybe Morales' intervention had done the trick. Maybe Karen had other enemies to bother, or maybe she'd taken up hot yoga and mellowed out. Yeah, no. The next morning, I headed out just before sunrise. I took the Southern Trail Loop, camera in hand, thermos in my pack, fully expecting nothing but moss, mist, and birdsong. I was out for maybe 4 hours. When I came back over the ridge, breathless from the incline and exhilarated by a perfect shot of 2 tanagers mid-flight, I felt it before I saw it. The front door to the cabin, my door, was ajar. I froze. For a second, my brain just refused to process. I hadn't left it open. I'm meticulous, especially when it comes to this place. I always lock up. Always. I crept up slowly, staying in the tree line. My instincts kicked in, not photographer instincts, but human ones. Adrenaline. Every step felt too loud. I crouched beside the porch and peered through the side window. She was inside. Karen Wells, in full suburban warrior regalia, khaki vest, clipboard, phone out snapping photos like she was on an Airbnb inspection tour. She was rifling through my mail, my bills. She flipped open my field notebook, took pictures of my gear layout, and even opened the kitchen drawer. For a second, I thought she was going to inventory my silverware. I stood up and walked in through the open door. What the hell do you think you're doing? She didn't even flinch, just looked up from my table like I'd interrupted her in the middle of a sales pitch. I'm documenting violations, she said calmly, like she had any legal standing whatsoever. There's an unauthorized permanent structure here, built without HOA approval, and I've received reports of illegal overnight occupancy. I blinked. This is my house. On my land. I inherited it. You have no right to be here. Karen crossed her arms. If you're not a member of Silver Pines HOA, then this land isn't zoned for residential use. Tents, maybe. Cabins. We're investigating a case of unauthorized development and potential squatting. I laughed. I actually laughed. It came out more shocked than amused. You broke into my home to accuse me of squatting. I didn't break in, she snapped. The door was unlocked. You unlocked it. That's still illegal. She stepped toward me, slow and deliberate. You've got 2 options, Mr. Hale. You can cooperate with the board, submit plans for conditional occupancy, and pay the appropriate penalties. Or we take this to court and file for demolition. You need to leave, right now. Karen didn't budge. You're making a mistake. This could have been handled quietly. Out, I repeated, voice rising. Now. For a moment, we just stood there, staring each other down in the middle of my living room. My grandfather's living room. The air between us was tense enough to snap. Finally, she turned, heading toward the door. But as she passed me, she muttered under her breath, "You're going to regret this." I locked the door behind her and called Morales before I even took off my boots. I didn't sleep that night. Even after she left, even after I locked the door, reset the security system, double-checked the windows, and made sure every point of entry was secure, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something had cracked. Something bigger than just a trespass or a fight with a nosy neighbor. Karen had crossed a line, and not just legally. It felt personal now. Territorial, like she thought this mountain answered to her. Lieutenant Morales showed up less than an hour after I called. He was polite, professional, but I could see it in his eyes. He was tired of this crap too. He walked the perimeter with me, listened to my account, took down the details. "She walked right in?" he asked, like she was hosting an open house. "She touch anything?" I pointed at the stack of papers on the table. My grandfather's land surveys, my mail, my damn spoon drawer. He let out a slow breath. "All right, I'll file this as an unlawful entry and trespass. She doesn't live on your property. No right to enter without permission, especially not to snoop around." "I want charges pressed," I said. He nodded. "We'll need to verify access logs and security footage. You got cams?" I gestured toward the corner where a discreet camera sat nestled in the beam. Motion triggered, records to cloud. Got her from the moment she stepped onto the porch. He looked almost relieved. "Good. Keep that footage. Email me a copy, and install a second one at the back door if you haven't already." Folks like her don't stop just because the law tells them to. The thing was, he was right. Karen didn't stop. The next day, I went into town to grab supplies. Just basic things. Fuel canisters, dry goods, some heavy-duty locks, and a backup trail cam to place along the driveway. I was gone for maybe 3 hours. When I got back, the first thing I noticed was the SUV. White. Parked off the gravel near the edge of my lot, just beyond the tree line. Windows tinted. Empty. I parked the Jeep and stepped out slowly. The front door was closed. Locked. No signs of forced entry. I scanned the surroundings. No noise. No movement. Then I saw the drone. It buzzed in the air, maybe 20 feet up, hovering near the treetops like some kind of suburban surveillance vulture. It turned as I moved, tracking me. I flipped it off. I didn't need a PhD in HOA psychopathy to know who was behind it. Karen wasn't just looking for a fight anymore. She was building a case, or at least pretending to. I marched inside, pulled up my security system, and flagged the footage from the past few hours. Sure enough, at 11:32 a.m., she showed up again. Not on foot this time. She rode shotgun while her private security goons scouted the perimeter on a bike. They didn't enter the house, but they got out, walked around the property, and took photographs. She even posed in front of the trailhead sign like she was listing the place on Zillow. That was it. Gloves off. I sent the footage to Morales along with timestamps and stills. I attached a formal complaint and requested a restraining order. The reply came quickly. The sheriff's office was escalating the matter. A district judge would review the footage within 24 hours. In the meantime, Morales would personally escort Karen the next time she attempted to set foot on my land. I didn't have to wait long. It was the following afternoon, just after 2, when I heard the crunch of gravel under tires. I stepped outside, camera in hand, already recording. Morales' patrol car pulled up first, followed by Karen's white SUV. She got out in full theater mode, sunglasses, folder, and a smug smile that made my blood pressure spike. Her bodyguard stayed by the car. Morales didn't waste time. "Ms. Wells," he said, voice clipped, "you've been advised to cease all attempts to access this property. Mr. Hale has filed a formal complaint. He has an active easement, and your recent entries constitute unlawful trespass." Karen smiled like she was auditioning for a crime drama. "I'm here on official HOA business," she said. "We have reason to believe this structure violates multiple zoning ordinances. We're pursuing civil action and need to establish documentation for our file, which doesn't entitle you to enter his home or surveil him," Morales snapped. "You've been warned. The next violation will result in arrest." That wiped the smile off her face. Briefly. She turned to me then, eyes sharp as ice. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." As she walked away, I noticed her nails, polished, manicured, but jagged at the edges, like claws dulled from too much scratching. She wasn't used to people saying no, and something in her walk told me she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I'd like to say I was surprised by what happened next, but honestly, I wasn't. When people like Karen Wells lose control, they don't retreat. They explode. And after being publicly scolded by Morales in front of her own security guy, she must have felt humiliated. Embarrassment like that doesn't sit well with people used to being obeyed. Still, I wasn't expecting her to completely lose her mind. It happened the next day, mid-afternoon. The weather was decent, cloudy, but warm. I'd been editing photos inside most of the day, sipping lukewarm coffee and listening to a podcast on migratory patterns. The mountain air always helped me focus. Until it didn't. A knock came at the door, sharp, fast, not the kind of knock you give when you're delivering cookies. I looked through the peephole. Karen, not dressed in her usual tactical suburban armor this time, no clipboard, no sunglasses, just her face red, her eyes wild. Something was off. I opened the door a crack, with the chain still latched. "I'm not here to talk," I said. "Turn around and leave." She shoved the door with both hands, trying to force it open. The chain held barely. "You don't get to ignore me," she screamed. I shut the door in her face and backed up, grabbed my phone, dialed Morales. Before it could even ring, I heard the chain snap. She must have used something, maybe a crowbar. Or she'd loosened it during a previous visit. I don't know. All I know is the door burst open and Karen Wells came storming into my living room like a rabid raccoon in a floral blouse. "You think you can bar me from my own community?" she yelled. "This is my jurisdiction, my road, my mountain." She lunged at me. And I mean that literally. No metaphor here. She charged across the room, grabbed a fistful of my flannel shirt, and started yanking. The buttons popped off like gunshots. I stumbled backward, caught off guard. I didn't want to hit her. I wasn't going to. But I also wasn't about to let her tear me apart like a mountain lion in a minivan. "Back off," I shouted, trying to twist away. She didn't. She doubled down. "You don't get to defy me in front of my people. You embarrassed me in front of Morales." That was it. That was her real problem. Not the house, not the easement, not the community. Pride. I managed to wrench free and bolted to the porch, shirt half torn, phone still in hand. I hit redial. "Sheriff's office," said the dispatcher. "Karen Wells just forced her way into my home and attacked me. I need Morales here. Now." 10 minutes later, the patrol car pulled up. I was standing on the porch, arms crossed, chest exposed like some half-naked frontiersman with a rage problem. Morales stepped out, took one look at me, and said, "What happened?" "She broke the door," I said, ripped my shirt, screamed about jurisdiction. Then he walked inside. Karen was still in the living room, pacing like a lion in a cage. She had the nerve to point at me as Morales entered. "He threatened me," she shouted. "He tried to assault me. I had to defend myself." Morales blinked. "You're saying he attacked you while you were in his home?" After forcing the door open, Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He invited me in and then changed his tone. "You kicked the door in, Karen." "I had probable cause. I got an anonymous tip about DAR-G activity." Morales held up a hand. "Save it." He walked out to the cruiser, asked me for the footage. I had it uploaded to the cloud already. 2 angles. One outside, one inside. Every word, every move. He watched the first 30 seconds, sighed, and went back inside. Karen was still protesting, still playing victim. He cuffed her anyway. She screamed, kicked, called him a traitor to the community, said I was an intruder, a parasite, a hostile presence. I stood there on the porch, watching as she was walked out and stuffed into the back seat like a teenager caught shoplifting. "You'll regret this, Marcus," she yelled, head twisting against the seatbelt. "You think this is over? You think anyone's going to believe you?" Morales slammed the door shut, calm as ever. I believe him. The silence after they drove off was the loudest thing I'd heard in weeks. Karen's screams still echoed in my ears, but the forest had reclaimed its rhythm. Wind in the trees, crows in the distance. Somewhere, far off, a hawk shrieked, like even nature needed a release after that insanity. I sat on the porch, shirt still torn, trying to process what had just happened. 1 minute, I was drinking coffee. The next, I was wrestling off a 55-year-old HOA president in my own damn living room. She'd snapped, completely. Morales saw it. The body cam caught it. My own footage recorded every second of it. But the craziest part? I still didn't feel safe. Because people like Karen don't go away quietly. They don't take defeat. They regroup. And that's exactly what she tried to do. 2 hours later, Morales called. "You might want to come down to the station," he said. "We've got her in holding, and there's something you need to see." When I arrived, Morales was standing by the intake desk, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd just stepped in something foul. "She's spinning a story," he said. "Claims she had permission from the HOA board to conduct compliance inspections. Says your cabin is a non-permitted structure built on unregistered land, and that she had evidence of illicit activity inside." He handed me a folder. Inside were color photos, my home, my gear, my grocery receipts, even a blurry image of me stepping out of the shower through a window I'd thought was covered. "She hired a private investigator," Morales said grimly. "That SUV you saw? Not her security. A freelance surveillance guy out of Asheville. No license, no permit to conduct ops in this county. We're picking him up now." I felt nauseous. "She's been watching me." "For at least a week," he confirmed. "Drone footage, long lens photos, notes. Most of it is just creepy. But there's also evidence of intent." "Intent for what?" "To remove you." He flipped open a second document. Emails. HOA board communications. Internal memos marked confidential. "She's been submitting false reports to the board, claiming you're squatting on HOA Greenbelt land, that your cabin's within Silver Pines jurisdiction, that your presence is a zoning violation." "That's a lie." "We know. County land records show the boundary line clearly. You're outside the HOA. Your servitude access is intact and legal. But she's trying to convince the board otherwise." And then came the kicker. "She's also been diverting HOA funds," Morales said, "to cover the cost of surveillance, to pay for drone rentals, and, get this, to put a down payment on a legal claim to your land." I stared at him. "She tried to buy my land. She tried to list it as part of a proposed HOA retreat center. Claimed it was pending annexation. Used fake minutes from a board meeting to show approval." I sat down hard. "Can you prove it?" He nodded. "We raided her home, found printed drafts of the forged documents, even found voice memos of her practicing statements to present to the board and local media. She knew this would go public. She was prepping her image. I didn't know whether to laugh or vomit. She didn't just hate me. She wanted my land, wanted my house, wanted to erase me completely and fold my property into her HOA empire like it was just another lot to manicure and regulate. She's being formally charged," Morales said. "Unlawful entry, assault, harassment, misuse of HOA funds, and forging municipal documents." That was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, the rest of the board began to crack. One member, Cynthia Glass, an older woman with a trembling voice and a conscience, came forward voluntarily. Said she'd suspected something was off for weeks, that Karen had pressured the board to sign blank meeting sheets, which she later filled in with fake votes. She said it was for expediting procedure, Cynthia explained. "We didn't think she'd do all this." But she did. And now the HOA was facing a scandal. The county district attorney launched an official investigation. The board was suspended pending audit. And Karen, she sat in jail trying to spin a narrative about Dietarder G. dens, squatters, and domestic terrorists hiding in the hills. Nobody was buying it. The mountain was quiet again. But this wasn't over yet. The court summons came faster than I expected. Barely a week after Karen's arrest, I received the official notice. The District Court of Jackson County would begin preliminary hearings in 2 weeks' time. The charges against her were serious, 8 counts total, including criminal trespass, assault, falsification of records, and misappropriation of HOA funds. But what made it even more surreal was that I, Marcus Hale, professional landscape photographer and part-time mountain hermit, had somehow become the central figure in a case that now had countywide attention. The media caught wind of it. A local station ran a headline, "HOA president arrested after violent dispute over mountain property." A photo of my cabin, taken without permission, accompanied the article. Below it, a blurry mugshot of Karen, eyes wide with disbelief, makeup half smeared, like the moment had betrayed her sense of inevitability. I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I wanted to be in the woods, waiting for warblers. But I had no choice. Thankfully, I wasn't alone. Entered Joan Trigger. She was my lawyer now. Morales referred her, said she was tough, sharp, and had a personal vendetta against overreaching HOA boards. I liked her immediately. Late 40s, never smiled unless it hurt someone she didn't like. Carried a stainless steel thermos of black coffee like it was a weapon. "You've got one job," she said during our first meeting. "Tell the truth. I'll do the rest." The hearing began in a cramped courtroom in Silva, the county seat. Karen's team was exactly what you'd expect: overpriced, overdressed, and underprepared. They walked in with shiny briefcases and smug grins, thinking they could drown the truth in technicalities. Joan tore them apart. "Your Honor," she said during opening remarks, "this is not a zoning dispute. This is a case of power, fraud, and physical aggression disguised as bureaucracy." The defendant used her position to target a legal property owner, fabricate evidence, and physically assault him in his own home. The judge, an older man named Carlyle with thick glasses and a visible allergy to nonsense, nodded slowly, like he already regretted accepting the case. Karen's side tried to counter their argument that I was a non-compliant landholder operating outside the bounds of a residential development zone, and that Karen was merely investigating irregularities brought to her attention. They had no idea what Joan had in her briefcase. She presented certified land records from the 1970s showing the original property boundaries and the easement agreement recorded with the county. Video footage of Karen entering my home uninvited. Audio recordings of her screaming, threatening, and physically assaulting me. Drone footage and private surveillance logs recovered from Karen's own devices, obtained via subpoena. Testimonies from Cynthia Glass and 2 other HOA members who admitted they were pressured into signing blank documents. At one point, Karen's lawyer tried to object, claiming the footage was inflammatory. The judge just raised an eyebrow and said, "So is trespassing." When Karen took the stand, yes, they actually let her testify, she imploded. She started calm, collected, even smug, talked about community integrity and shared values. But the more Joan cross-examined her, the more the cracks showed. She contradicted herself twice in the span of 5 minutes. Claimed she'd never been inside my house until the footage rolled. Claimed she had permission from the board until her own emails showed otherwise. Then came the final blow. Joan pulled out a document, a fake HOA meeting transcript showing unanimous approval to pursue reclamation of the Hale property. Karen's signature was at the bottom. "We have digital forensics," Joan said, proving this was created on her personal computer using a non-HOA template at 2:43 a.m., 2 days before she attempted to have Mr. Hale removed. Karen's face froze. Dead silence in the courtroom. The judge leaned forward. "Is that true?" Karen tried to speak. Couldn't. Her lawyer stammered. The gavel hit the desk like thunder. "That's enough for today. We'll reconvene with formal charges." Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I kept my head down. I wasn't in this for fame. I just wanted my peace back. But the damage Karen had done wasn't just to me. It was to the very idea of what a neighborhood could be. Her abuse of power, her delusions of control, they'd infected the entire community. The county launched a full audit of Silver Pines HOA. By the end of the week, the board was formally dissolved. An external administrator was appointed. And Karen. She was officially indicted on all 8 counts. You'd think, after the indictment, things would settle down. You'd think the storm would finally pass. But this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a scorched earth campaign. And Karen Wells was the kind of woman who would light her own damn house on fire just to prove a point. The official charges were enough to bury her. But she wasn't done. Not yet. 3 days after the indictment, I was sitting on my porch trying to do the unthinkable. Relax. I'd even made peace with the idea that it might rain that night. For once, I was okay with the idea of being stuck indoors, just me, my laptop, and the kind of whiskey my grandfather used to drink while reading newspapers aloud to squirrels. Then I got a notification, a new legal filing, from Karen, a civil suit, for emotional distress, defamation of character, and reputational damage. She was suing me. I laughed, out loud. A bitter, dry kind of laugh, like something ancient rattling in a cave. Joan, my lawyer, didn't laugh. "She's desperate," she said. "This is her Hail Mary. She's trying to create counterpressure, maybe even leverage a settlement, but it won't go anywhere." And it didn't. The judge reviewed the filing and dismissed it before we even entered a courtroom. "Frivolous and retaliatory," he wrote in the ruling. "A transparent attempt to distract from pending criminal proceedings." Still, the fact that she'd tried, it made something clear. Karen wasn't just losing power. She was unraveling. The community felt it too. Silver Pines HOA was in shambles. The audit report came out that same week. 60 pages of bureaucratic horror, embezzlement, coerced votes, fake violations issued to undesirable homeowners, threats of fines for things like non-neutral paint tones, and unsanctioned backyard hammocks. Karen had weaponized the HOA into a little kingdom of paranoia and control. The county forced a restructuring. A temporary administrator was appointed, Samuel Ortega, a former city planner with zero patience for nonsense. He scheduled an emergency community meeting, invited every homeowner, and made it clear the HOA is not your personal police force. It's not here to micromanage your grill size or monitor your shrubbery. It exists to serve the community, not dominate it. And then he did something unexpected. He invited me to speak. I didn't want to. Hell, I had half a mind to sell the cabin, vanish into the Rockies, and never hear the word HOA again. But something in me said no. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was just the ghost of my grandfather muttering, "You don't let people like that win." So I stood in front of a group of maybe 50 residents, many of whom had glared at me for years without knowing why, and I told them the truth. About the land, about Karen, about the way she broke into my home and tried to tear it, and me, apart. I showed them the map my grandfather had drawn, with the easement clearly marked. I told them how much this place meant to him, and now to me. I watched their faces change. Some looked ashamed, some nodded. A few clapped. One older man stood up. Howard, I think his name was, ex-Marine, said he always thought something was off about Karen. She fined me once for having a flag that wasn't HOA approved, he said. A damn American flag. That got a laugh. A real one this time. Things began to shift after that. People who had been silent started speaking up. They told stories of threats, fines, whispered rumors Karen had spread about their families. It was like the whole neighborhood had been under a fog, and now, finally, they were waking up. Samuel Ortega promised reforms, transparency, a limit to the HOA's scope. He even offered to formally recognize my easement as a protected passage, exempt from future board interference. But I declined, not out of mistrust, but because I already had that protection. Legally. And I didn't need anyone else's approval to exist on my own land. Karen remained in custody as the final trial date approached. She gave one interview from jail, a bitter, unhinged rant blaming deep state planners, eco-terrorist neighbors, and photographers with anti-suburban agendas. It aired once, then vanished. By now, even the tabloids didn't care what she had to say. And I finally exhaled. The war was almost over. It's been exactly 1 year since Karen Wells tried to tear my shirt off in my own living room while screaming about jurisdiction. 1 year since I stood on my porch half naked, filing a police report with a ripped flannel, a cracked voice, and the kind of adrenaline spike that should be reserved for bear attacks and flash floods. A year. And now I stand in that same doorway, only this time wearing a pressed button down, watching as a group of school kids walk past my cabin with sketchbooks and clipboards, part of a state-sponsored environmental program about conservation and native bird species. The place has changed. Not the land, not the trees, not the rocks, not the view from the ridge where the warblers still migrate each spring, but the energy. The cabin, once just my retreat, has become something more. After the trial and Karen's conviction, something remarkable happened. The story, weird as it was, touched a nerve. Local conservationists reached out, then a regional nature photography guild. They proposed turning the cabin into a seasonal retreat for young photographers and naturalists. Not a business, not a public zoo, just a quiet space to teach people how to see again. I agreed, on one condition: the land stays protected. Private. No HOA oversight. Ever. They drafted the paperwork. State level. Sealed. Permanent. And now, 3 weekends a year, I host tiny workshops. 5 or 6 students, tops. We hike. We shoot. We sit in silence for hours, just listening to the mountains breathe. It's peaceful again. Karen, on the other hand, is not. She was convicted on all 8 counts. The final sentence: 4 years in state prison, plus mandatory restitution to both me and the Silver Pines HOA. The irony, of course, is that the HOA had to pay me damages first, $1.8 million in civil compensation for emotional distress, legal costs, and property disruption. Then they turned around and sued her to recover it. She lost that case too. She's banned from holding any position of administrative authority for life. Her real estate license was revoked. And as of the last news I heard, she's currently serving time in a low-security women's facility near Charlotte, where she reportedly leads empowerment seminars for other inmates. You can't make this stuff up. Occasionally, I still get emails from former HOA members. Thank yous, apologies. Even a fruit basket once from the Glass family, who said my story helped them stand up to a different HOA bully back in Florida. Funny how things ripple. But there's one part I haven't told anyone, not even Joan. About a month after everything settled, I was cleaning out the old file cabinet in the back storage room, my grandfather's files. I found a sealed envelope tucked behind a false panel. Yellowed, labeled in his handwriting, "Don't trust anyone who wants to control the road to your home." Inside was a map, a second easement, hidden, overgrown, nearly forgotten, marked with GPS coordinates and a note. If they ever try to stop you, use the back path. I hiked it last fall. Took me 3 hours and a run-in with a very grumpy raccoon. But it was there, still clear, still legal, a shadow trail carved decades ago by a man who saw the world changing and prepared for the worst. I keep that map framed above my desk now, not because I need it, but because it reminds me of what it means to defend your ground, to stand your ground, to keep the mountain yours.